Hello, hello, hello. Welcome to Cloud Native London's June 2021 meetup. It is fantastic to be back. I'm your host, Cheryl Hung. As usual, we're going to start off the evening with a little bit of music and get everyone feeling relaxed and feeling in the mood for a couple of Cloud Native talks tonight. So please sit back, chill out for the next 15 minutes or so, grab yourself a drink, and this is the timings for tonight's meetup. So we'll have about 15 minutes before we kick off with a welcome call, and then we'll have 3 talks and we will wrap up at 9 p.m. BST. In the meantime, if you'd like to, please come to Rambly, which is at this link, oischeryl.com/r. You can come hang out with some other people, some other attendees of the meetup. You can chat to people and you can watch it together as well. And with that, I'm going to head over to Rambling myself. So I'll be back with you in about 10-15 minutes.
All right.
All right, 1 minute warning till we start the welcome. So please get yourself a drink, settled in, and we'll be starting very soon. Alrighty, I think this is a good moment for us to get going. So, once again, welcome to Cloud Native London. We are a strong, open, diverse developer community around the cloud native platform and technologies, usually in London right now, as with everything else virtual, but hoping to be able to get back to the live events in the next couple of months, seeing depending on how the vaccines and lockdown and everything is going. My name is Cheryl Hung. I'm the host for tonight's meetup, and I work at the CNCF, which is the home of Kubernetes, Prometheus, Envoy, and lots of other open source technologies. You can find me on Twitter at @OyCheryl. And tonight we have 3 fantastic speakers for you. So first up, we have Michael, who's going to talk to us about Kubestr, identifying, validating, and evaluating your Kubernetes storage. Second up, we have Hubert, who's going to talk to us about software licensing and DevOps. Then we'll have a 15-minute break. And then our third speaker will be Viktor, who is going to tell us why developers do not need Kubernetes. Note that this is a slight change in the agenda. Viktor was originally first, but he and Michael have switched places. And then we will wrap up at 9 o'clock UK time. That's enough about me. Let me find out a little bit about you. So we're going to do a little bit of live polling because we're currently live streaming to YouTube, to Twitch, and to Rambly. So I've got 3 questions that I want to find out about you and 3 questions about how you are using Cloud Native. So please go to grab your phone, your laptop, whatever. You don't need to download anything. Just go to this link, oycheryl.com/p. And that will take you to this kind of service, which is called Poll Everywhere, where you can put in a screen name and you can follow along and answer questions and basically tell everybody else a little bit about yourself and introduce yourself. If you lose this link, then don't worry, there's a slightly longer one that you can use as well. So let's get going and see how this is working. All right, I see people have already started. So the first question is this your first time at Cloud Native London? So your choices are yes and no, very simply. And I can see already that quite a lot of people, 83% or so, 80% are returning to Cloud Native London. And yes, about 15-20% are new. So I'm going to give a couple of minutes to kind of let people figure out how to use the service and how to answer questions. Okay, doesn't seem to be moving anymore. But it is always nice to see whether people are coming back or whether this is their first time. So either way, it is very good to have you here. Okay, I see a few small adjustments still coming in. Okay, I'm going to keep moving forwards and you can try, the questions will skip along, so just try and follow along with how it's going. Oh, a few last minute people coming in here, I think. Nice. All right, let's go to our second question. Where are you right now? So you should see a map and you should be able to just press wherever you are, which will drop a pin and it will just tell us where you are. So I see quite a few people coming in the UK, which, you know, given this is Cloud Native London, isn't too surprising, but a couple of people joining from India, which is very cool. Somebody who is, I guess, on a boat in the middle of the Atlantic Ocean. If this is a mistake, which I think it might be, you can unclick that, there you go, and fix that. But that would be cool if you were coming from the Atlantic Ocean, so that works as well. No, it seems like we have a pretty strong, it's kind of UK and India contingency tonight. Again, I'll just give one more minute, see if anybody else is gonna join in the post. Okay, let's keep going. Let's keep moving. Third question about you. What is your job title? So I've got some options here. Just pick the one that is closest to what you're doing. So your choices are architect, application developer, backend developer, engineering manager, SRE/DevOps engineer, security engineer, or anything else. And if you are doing anything else, then please pop into the comments what you're doing and introduce yourself as well. And looks like SRE and DevOps engineer is definitely pulling ahead. Quite a good showing of other. I would love to hear what you're doing. 0 application developers, backend developers, or engineering managers tonight. It's quite surprising. But maybe more people will show up in a little bit. Oh, okay, seems pretty settled. Still 1 or 2 coming in. The next 3 questions are about how you run Kubernetes, if you run Kubernetes, and they've been submitted by our 3 speakers for the evening, Michael, Hubert, and Viktor. So I'm going to ask them to kind of comment on the results as they come in. So let's go for the first speaker tonight is going to be Michael. And Michael wants to ask people, what do you think about storage in Kubernetes? So your answers are: storage is boring. Is the database a storage? All I do is storage. And storage performance testing is a problem in Kubernetes. So Michael, what were you thinking when you were putting this question together?
So a lot of the application developers, which you've just said that there wasn't too many people on tonight, but the idea is that from a DevOps point of view, or more from a developer point of view, it seems that the database is like the level of storage, and we're seeing a few in there, but then we're obviously seeing a lot more platform operators, SREs, now coming into this space. So they're either all doing storage, or people are finished with storage. They have nothing to do with storage. So storing is boring, and they may be doing everything in a stateless manner. So yeah, there was some fun things in there, but I think it reflects what we're seeing out there in the field as well. So
oh, that's cool.
It's good that the bottom one, because that's kind of what we're definitely talking about. So that's always a good thing when that number's high.
Well, I think storage is boring is actually an interesting answer here, because I come from a storage background as well. So I think storage is very interesting, but it's a good sign if other people think it's boring. That's kind of how I see it. So nice. So good mix here of answers. And you will be talking a bit about performance testing in your talk in a minute. Is that right, Michael?
Yeah, absolutely. And how, from a Kubernetes point of view, it can be done, but I think we've got a very easy way, a little handy tool that you can have in your back pocket to be able to do it better or easier is probably the best way.
All right, fantastic. Okay, let's go to our second question, and this is from Hubert. So, do you have an automated license checker for all packages and dependencies? So your options are yes, no, only some, or I like pizza, to avoid giving a real answer. Nice.
Everybody should love the pizza. There's no such a there's no such a like a human interaction where can't be improved with a pizza.
I definitely miss being able to sit around with pizza at these events, but pizza's getting a really good showing, actually. 40% of people are saying they like pizza.
That's good. If the people like pizza, then basically that's good. I was hoping for a little bit higher yes answer, but yeah. But pizza is good as well. So hopefully after my talk, they will do not have to choose the pizza as an answer. And if you think this storage is boring, let me tell you what I have to tell you about it today.
All right. I look forward to seeing it, and hopefully you will change the minds of some of the 40% of people who said no. Perfect. All right, let's go to our last live question of the day. This one comes from Viktor, I believe. So the question is everyone allowed to deploy to production or only a dedicated team? I believe Viktor is on. And
I am.
Yeah. What were your thoughts? What were you expecting with this?
I mean, it's to be expected. It makes me sad, but it is to be expected, right? Because that really means that there is no trust. Kind of, hey, I trust you to write your code, but you're not allowed to put that code into production. On the other hand, it's expected. It's how I think still majority of companies work.
I'm laughing because Hubert is nodding very, very definitely. Do you agree with that, Hubert?
I think I will, after giving my talk, I will come back to this, and I will explain why I don't think that everybody should. Let me put it this way: after my talk, is more understandable why we created gatekeeping, but that's a completely different story.
Can we agree maybe that no humans should be pushing to production, and then we are kind of.
Yes, that's definitely
problem,
will
right?
be much better. Give someone else like a kubectl with the with the like administration rights. This is not what I would like to see.
Nice. All right. Well, 6% said everyone is allowed, so maybe they've got more automation in than other people, or maybe they just don't care about some of the potential issues. So I guess we'll find out. All right. That is the end of our live polling bit. So thank you everyone for following along and submitting your answers. The next bit about this is to thank some of tonight's sponsors who keep this event running. So I'd like to invite Lizzie to say a couple of words for Technovo.
Hi everyone, I'm Lizzie from Technovo. We're a challenger digital consultancy, and we provide expert partnership and growth without creating dependencies or disrupting culture, which basically just means we like to operate a little differently from other consultancies. And we pride ourselves from investing in talented developers and working together to provide the best possible outcome for our clients. Our clients include both public and private sectors, and working on some really exciting transformation projects. If you'd like to find out more, come and find me in Rambly or find me on LinkedIn.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Lizzie. And let's go to Zan next for Circle CI.
Hello, everyone. I'm Zan. I'm a developer advocate at Circle CI. We're a CI/CD platform, leading CI/CD platform. Today I'm just gonna take a couple of moments to talk to you about a new feature that we released recently. It's called dynamic config, which allows you to kind of change how your pipelines behave essentially at runtime based on what's happening inside of your what changes you have in your code base. Like you can do some analysis or elsewhere as well. So which unlocks a bunch of cool new use cases like mono repos, that kind of stuff. So always new features from us. Anyway, if you want to check us out, go to circleci.com or ping me on Twitter. I'm Zedmark and pretty much anywhere else. Yeah.
Perfect. Thank you so much, Dan. All right, Ashley, over to you.
Very much, Cheryl. Yes, we, Palo Alto Networks, perhaps better known for our firewalls. We've actually invested well over $1 billion in securing cloud native workflows and cloud native in general. And we'd love you to have a look at some of our product suite and what we can do. But more importantly, if you are interested in cloud native, which you are if you're here, then we're hiring. We really want to bring people in who know about how these things are operated and bring them in and get them a security background. You don't need to have security through and through. We can teach that. We want to have that way of working. So yes, well done, Cheryl. Thanks everybody for joining us.
Sweet. Thank you so much, Ashley. Humio cannot make it today, so I'm going to read out a little line that they gave me. What they wanted me to say is that Humio is a time series log management solution for unrestricted event analysis scaling to multiple terabytes per day, on-premise or hosted. Michael, would you like to introduce Kasten by Veeam?
Yeah, sure. So we're focusing on data management when it comes to Kubernetes. So Kasten by Veeam, very much a business unit within the wider Veeam story, if anyone's familiar with from a virtualization backup perspective. So focusing on backup and recovery, application mobility, disaster recovery, all of the things around like data management. And yeah, even though the talk's not really talking about Kasten K10, it's talking more about storage. But the one thing that we've got is a free community edition that enables us to give out to the community 10 Kubernetes nodes. So 10 nodes for free forever. So ideal for anyone that's running those home labs or at least test and dev type labs that just need something to be able to protect those stateful workloads or complex applications. So yeah, I'll make sure there's a link to another giveaway that we've got that's still going on from KubeCon around a quick start guide. I'll try and put it in the YouTube chat, but also in the other platform as well. But there is a link coming on the first slide.
Fantastic. And to round us out for the evening, Jay, would you like to go and introduce UMatter?
Sure. Hi, everyone. I'm Jay. I'm a senior consultant here at UMatter. UMatter are a technology recruitment company primarily focused in the cloud space. We were set up really to remind everyone that you matter and to put engineers back at the center of the recruitment process. So yeah, if you're hiring for your team right now or looking for a new role, feel free to get in touch. You can find me on LinkedIn or Twitter.
All right, thank you so much. And thank you to all of our sponsors for keeping this event running even through the pandemic. If you want to come and join us, you can come and speak or you can come and sponsor as well. We are looking to get back to the face-to-face events. So if you have an office around central London or around the kind of Old Street area that you are allowing external events in, please do let me know. We'd love to try and get back to face-to-face events as soon as we can. And you can go to cloudnativelund.com to get involved in any way. And that is it. So I'm going to stop sharing and I'm going to hand over to our first speaker of the evening, who is going to be Michael.
Okay, so hopefully everyone can hear me and see my screen as well, the most important bit. You don't need to see me or anything like that. But so as I was saying in the sponsor bit, so I'm all about everyone's on different learning journeys when it comes to Kubernetes or cloud native. And one of the things that we did from a Kasten point of view at KubeCon was give away this book, which is a super useful, it's an ebook, but it gives us the ability to kind of walk and talk through what you're doing from a Kubernetes point of view, like get some hands-on commands and all of that good stuff. So if you follow that link, and I've put it into YouTube, if that works, it might have blocked it out, but then also in the other platform as well. So that's the first thing, and then I'll get into the actual topic of what we're talking about. So Kubestr, and Cheryl, I've had that feedback about how you say Kubestr since we released it. So don't feel bad. It's a thing. But what I've touched on is, or what we want to touch on here is, this is hopefully hitting the easy button to being able to explore some of the options around Kubernetes storage and what you have. So there's 3 elements to that, and I'll get into a bit of that. But ultimately, so first of all, Michael Cade. So if I can't answer the questions right here now on chat or after the talk, then feel free to hit me up on social media at Michael Cade 1. That's probably all we need to talk about on that, because that's such a big picture of me. I think everyone from an open source, and we probably don't need to dwell on this too much because that's why everyone's here, is that we kind of know how critical it is to enable our customers, how it enables the community. There's a history of innovation from a Kasten point of view about delivering, not only contributing but also innovating, and Kubestr is one of those open source projects that we've just recently announced and delivered out there. So really, we understand what's going on here, right? So, and then what is the challenge? Why did we bother? Why did we do this? Well, the challenge that persistent storage options are, well, they're not equal, because ultimately, yes, we all know that there's different storage vendors out there that are offering up different storage types and tiers. But then when we get into the public cloud, then it's an overwhelming choice of what that storage could look like. So, for example, in Azure or AWS, you have different nodes, which then dictate different storage performance and storage ceilings for performance. And it might be that you have to do a lot of research and a lot of tests and analytics against that storage to understand, well, is that storage fast enough? And we all know how that goes. We generally will spend the time, whilst we're also trying to spend a lot of time on other areas of the deployment and the platform. And we generally find something that's fast enough, and we might not necessarily at that point go back and tweak what that storage looks like. And potentially we're leaving a lot of cost out there in terms of we are definitely getting the performance that we need, but we might be over provisioned. We might be using a lot more storage than what we actually need. So these are some of the challenges in there. Another area of this is your storage ready for data protection. Does it have a volume snapshot class? Does it enable the CSI driver is fast and come into the public clouds as well? Is it enabled? Is it configured correctly? I'm sure many of us have played around with the CSI driver in many of the public clouds, and it's not necessarily the easiest thing to configure. Obviously, that goes away soon, where they depreciate the in-tree provisioner and they implement the CSI driver as a default, which will change and potentially loses some of the impact that this tool brings. But that's just one area of the tool, the validation stage. So, and before we kind of get onto the actual demo of showing this and what it looks like, is that benchmarking storage is not a new thing. I saw it actually on the poll. That was always a good thing to storage is my like everyday type thing. Storage is my whole world. I can't remember what the answer was, but benchmarking hasn't gone away since we actually first got access to storage. We wanted to know whether it was performant enough to hold our data, to store our workloads, and whether it was good enough to handle the workload that we had. So, and that doesn't go away just because Kubernetes or cloud native. We need to be sure that we're still benchmarking that in a way that enables us to pick and choose the right storage for the right workload. And then this goes back to what I was just saying about in-tree provisioners, and then this boom of CSI drivers coming out there from all of the different storage vendors, the cloud providers, and then even the ones coming out of left field that are providing a CSI provisioner. This gives us the opportunity to streamline and create that de facto interface, which is great. And it also gives us that overwhelming choice. And overwhelming always seems like it's a bad thing, but actually I'd rather have more choice and be flexible than I would be locked into a specific right. So this is only ever going to be growing over the next however many. We've seen how fast this has grown from a CNCF point of view over the last, let's say, 6 months or 2 years. Like, we've definitely seen this grow. So that whole supportability around different storage is absolutely improving. So, and obviously stateful data is also on the rise from that. So what we wanted to do was create a solution that ensured that the right data was stored in the right place. So you've got all of your applications. You've generally got an idea of what that workload looks like, i.e. the users and what that looks like. And then you've got all of these overwhelming storage options out there, whether it's block, file, and then varying different levels of that as well, and managed and unmanaged, and they all play into a huge list of options. Then the different cloud providers. What we're saying is we needed to have a way of being able to quickly identify what that storage is, validate what that storage is, how is it configured, and then evaluate that so that we can benchmark it so that we know what it looks like from an application point of view. Generally speaking, from a database point of view, or some sort of messaging queue, or the application itself, the actual stateful workload. So this is where Kubestr was born. And obviously you could do this. You could go out and you could create a pod. You could deploy that into your Kubernetes cluster. You could add something like flexible IO, and you could manually go through this and absolutely validate that everything is done. We've all been probably through the steps to create and confirm that your CSI driver is configured correctly. What Kubestr does is automate that process. So you download a very tiny binary, and I'll show you what that looks like shortly. And it really, first and foremost, gives you the ability to identify all of the Kubernetes storage options that you have available within your clusters. Then it validates that they work, i.e. that snapshot that I just mentioned around CSI. And then it evaluates. So it does use flexible IO that we've been using for years around benchmarking, but it will then give us an output to that. And there's a few things that I'll touch on when we get into the demo as well. And on that note, so first and foremost, Kubestr.io is probably the first place to go and have a quick look if you're interested in this at the end. Hopefully that this gives you a reason to be more interested in this, I guess. And it gives that small breakdown, a much smaller breakdown to what I've just delivered in that talk track. It gives us a short demo as well. And then it gives you the instructions on where and what to, where you can install the tool, discover the available storage options, etc., how to run it. And then it gives a contributing link down the bottom here, which just takes us to the GitHub page. So if we jump over to the GitHub page, you can see here that we've been going for, I think, a couple of months now, as in live and out there. And you can see that we've got a few PRs that are actively being worked on by the community, and not just the Kasten team. So it's very much getting out there. The other thing that I wanted to show was this, where, in fact, my screen's over it. So we're just short of 120 stars on there. So you can see what, and the forks, you can see that we are getting some community traction in here, which is why we were excited and wanting to share this even further and even wider. So yeah, the readmes in there that you're seeing on Kubestr.io. There was the binaries as well that I wanted to show. So in order to, where can I get started? Where can I get this running? So you can have this on your Windows machine, Linux machine, as well as your ARM64, and including your new shiny MacBook M1 if you want to run that. So, and ultimately what it uses is kubectl. So as long as you're in the right context, then you've got the ability to run this against your Kubernetes storage. So if I jump over now into, hopefully this is not, I've tried to spread it out so that you can at least see the commands and it's not the normal. So so I have Kubestr downloaded on Windows in this particular instance. Obviously there's the other binaries that we can deploy. And if we just take a look at what we have here, is it's a simple run command that gives us a few options as to what we can run. So we've got an availability or available command of CSI check, which is going to run the CSI snapshot and restore. And I'll touch on that when we run it. We've also got the ability to run that FIO test. Now, you notice that you don't see the identify option in there. So let's just clear that. Let's run this and walk through what this command does. So just by running this, obviously making sure that your kubectl is hitting the correct cluster. What we've done is this tool is going to scan your Kubernetes cluster. And obviously, if you've got different contexts, you would use kubectl to jump around those contexts. Then what we do is we take a quick look at the cluster, making sure that we have access to the API layer, the role-based access control is configured correctly, and what version of Kubernetes we're running. Then we see what available storage provisioners we have. So I'm using an AWS cluster, an EKS cluster in AWS at the moment. So you can see that it's discovered that, it's configured. This is a CSI driver. The following info, it gives a provider, it gives a website description of that. Then it gives us the storage classes that we have available within that CSI driver. So I have EBS SC and volume snapshot CSI AWS VSC. Now, if we wanted to run FIO straight away on that, we get those example commands that we can run, as well as the testing of the CSI. But then what you also see, and this is obviously today because it's not default to have the CSI driver. By default, when you deploy EKS or any of the public cloud offerings, they're all using, I believe they're still using, at least Azure and AWS are still using the in-tree provisioner. So, but that doesn't stop us still being able to use this tool against that. Now, obviously, you're not going to have the snapshot capabilities and functionality there, but you still may want to understand what the performance of the storage is. So we can still run the FIO command against that. So again, it gives you the storage class. So if we wanted to, so you could drill down and you could get the help on the CSI check. What I want to do is just simply run that CSI check against my storage class and my volume snapshot class. So let's go ahead and run that. And over here, I've set up a watch to my pods. So you can see now that it's creating an application. It's stopped. So you can see that we're deploying a pod, which is going to perform our volume snapshot, our volume restore, and then come back and tell us that everything's good. What we're also seeing, and I'll show you this on the next one because it's the same process, is that it's got, so you can see over on the left, hopefully you can see on the left, that we're taking that snapshot, and you can see over on the right that we've got our running pod. And then what you're going to see after that snapshot is complete is the restore pod, and then the validation, and then the termination of these pods. So hopefully that's clear on what we're doing there. So this takes a little time to just quickly run through there. Typical live demos. Let's jump over to Azure, and I'll just carry on there. That's been happening a few times. It's because something didn't clear up correctly. Okay, so if we want to run the same, let's go and quickly just do this over there. That's why you have two clusters. Yeah, maybe not. So let me just run, let's lose that up there now. Okay, so going through the same process, we're creating that application. And if whilst we're doing that, let's quickly just jump back in here and I'll show you what the process is doing. So from a pod deployment point of view, so lightweight OS and all of the stuff that we need, we're going to create a PVC, we're going to create a persistent volume. We're then going to snapshot and then we're going to restore that. And then that comes back, hopefully this time, and tell us whether it's configured correctly. Now, I could have said that, there you go, my demo has found an issue with my CSI configuration. And it's alerted me of that before we've realized that there is a problem. So it's given us that validation of that. So hopefully by now that will have. So you can see that we're using this clone now and we're restoring the application. So we took that snapshot, we're restoring that application. You can see here that we have a cloned pod and we're restoring that back in. Once that's complete, over on the left-hand pane, this is going to say everything's good, and it's then going to go through the cleanup process of clearing everything up. It's then going to give us this big green OK rather than that horrible error that we saw up here, but at least it gives you an idea of, well, what is configured correctly, not configured correctly. So it was unable to bind the volume snapshot content. Operation cannot be fulfilled. Yeah, okay. I'm not going to troubleshoot that on the live demo, but ultimately, so it worked over on Azure, so we're good. Everything's configured correctly from a CSI and a snapshot configuration point of view. So then if we start to get into really the the evaluation of the project is around actually what is the performance, what's the performance that we're getting from the storage. Now, I mentioned as well here that there's so many different nodes and different storage options and everything. I've got a slide that's worth quickly showing there as well. But let me, because we changed the, so managed CSI. Now out of the box, new managed CSI. It will run FIO minus S managed CSI. Oh, okay, I know what I did. So again, what this is going to do is going to go and create that PVC, create those applications. You can again see over on the right-hand side that we're going through, we're creating that pod. What this pod is going to do out of the box is use an FIO configuration that we had, that we've pre-built into the tool. Now, whilst that is still going, because at the end you get an output to say what that storage is capable of, you can export that out to JSON and then obviously push that out into a file. This is probably the biggest area that we think we can enhance this as a community. We can definitely use some help in what that export can look like. We can definitely export that out to a much more friendlier way of being able to visualize that data. But let's say that you do understand and you've built FIO configuration files to your application, or let's say you want to understand what it looks like in terms of being able to backwards read, and there's hundreds of open source FIO files out there, configuration files, and you can see I've got a couple of options here. I won't run the one at the bottom because it does take a long time, but this one here is just one that I've downloaded, and it allows us to go and backwards read everything through our file system. So understanding what it looks like from a restore point of view, or some sort of data, leveraging that data, being able to do something with that data, reading it back to understand what it is. So it gives us a good idea of what that looks like. So if we just look at what we got as an output, and this is where, again, this is where the community help comes in, is so we ran an FIO test. You can see over here that everything's terminating. So we ran an FIO test against storage class managed CSI with a PVC size of 100 gig. I don't know if you all saw as well, but we can change what that size looked like. Again, depends on your workload, your application, your database, whatever that data service may be. It took 50 seconds, and then it uses the global defaults that we have within here. So we have two different types of jobs. So we have a read IOPS and a write IOPS, and then a read BW and a write BW. And one is using a block size of 4K, and one is using a block size of 128K. So you can start to see, match that up to your application, and then you can understand what that looks like on that particular storage. Then what you can do is you can then go and change what that node looks like, what the storage looks like, and then I don't know how long I've got left on here, but so what we've just done there is still that same pod deployment, that PVC, that PV, and then you saw the results. So 3 really simple, easy ways of being able to, one, identify what the storage options you have. And I think it's important here is that because of CSI coming and a lot of companies looking at migrating to CSI-backed storage versus in-tree provisioner because they're going to be deprecated, this could be a useful tool to actually understand what is available within my Kubernetes cluster and what are we using it for. Let's have that easy command to go and do that. Then you saw the validation of being able to understand what that is, and then the evaluation of that using flexible IO, and then simulate your given workload to that. Yes, there's the one out of the box, which might be consistent to what your application looks like, but there's hundreds of other options out there, as well as obviously bring your own, as well as different sizes. And really the overarching thing here is this is a handy little tool for benchmarking your Kubernetes storage, but also giving you some of that visibility into that. And this one just goes into choosing your cloud storage, understanding your storage. This is taken from Azure, but every cloud has the same options. You have various different compute. You have compute optimized, memory optimized, storage optimized, GPUs, high performance. It's endless and it's overwhelming. We have premium and standard disk types, managed, unmanaged for each of those. You can see how this web's out of control. And meanwhile, we're all trying to get on and do other things. We can't necessarily be storage expert, Kubernetes storage experts. We might know, like Cheryl said, I come from a storage background as well. So I know what the speeds and feeds potentially need to look like for some applications or some databases, but there's such a wide, I don't want to be wasting my time on that when I've got so much, we've got the same challenges when it comes to networking that CNI fix. We've got the same problems when it comes to different areas and just general deployment. And I know we're going to be talking about licensing and stuff like that. There's an overwhelming amount of other things that we need to be spending time on. So we really wanted the easy button to highlight that. Okay, so just wrapping things up. How to get started. Kubestr.io is the best place. That top QR code is going to take you to that Kubestr.io site. The bottom one is going to take you to the GitHub. The goals of it, and I kind of touched on this, is, well, how do we make it much more easier, especially if you've not come from a storage background, but now you're focusing on what storage is available, especially in the public cloud. How do we understand? How do we do more with that? Handy set of tools. I've said that hitting the easy button for Kubernetes storage. I've come up with all of the marketing buzzwords for this. And then in the future, that biggest thing is around FIO results. How do we make that not just more visual and like how can we see that, but also think about this as a community. How can we share that so that we don't have to go around deploying new EKS or new AKS or new GKE clusters just to understand what that storage does? And then even more so, those enterprise storage solutions that we see on premises, how do we benchmark against them and come up with a pool of results that enable us to have a better understanding as a community, all in all saving each other more time? And then we get into things like, how do we make this more policy defined so we know what storage to choose based on something that we've given them, some facts. Yeah, those 3 things. I think I've touched on that all the way through this. And I think just before we go to the next, or if there's any questions, then my ask is, please look at the project. Most of you answered around being an SRE, so you probably have that responsibility of storage in your list of responsibilities. I'd love for you to just have a look what needs attention, what are we missing, feedback, contributions. Obviously, that's always welcome. Spread the word where possible. Like you saw that the PRs are there, you saw that the stars are there. We think that there is actually a growing need for this, especially as we get closer to CSI being the default And yeah, as again, that handy little tool for benchmarking your Kubernetes storage. So with that, I'll stop sharing and see, Cheryl, if there's any questions.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Michael. Actually, I think, Hubert, you had a question that you put into the chat. So maybe you want to ask Michael directly.
Okay. One of what the tool does, well, what you explain it's just doing the snapshots. But in snapshotting for the not only CSI but also in API was added in the kind of recent version of the Kubernetes. And you know, long tail of the updates, especially in the Kubernetes, if you do not use the any kind of cloud provided version, updating Kubernetes is not that something very common. So how do your tool behave in the little bit older version of the Kubernetes? Not only, I'm not asking only CSI, but also how he interacts with API.
So that's what that aggregated check was doing. That's checking whether we have the ability to perform that check, that the check that you're saying. So whether it goes back, so it is back. I can't remember what Kubernetes version it goes back to, but that aggregation layer check is checking on the API.
All right, that's what I would like to ask. So I can test on my cluster.
Yeah.
Awesome. We are pretty much out of time, Michael. So apologies, but people can contact you afterwards. I think, did you put up your?
Yeah.
Contact you, Twitter or?
Yeah, Twitter is probably best, at Michael Cade 1.
Great, perfect. So yeah, if you've got any questions, please get in touch with Michael afterwards. And with that, we are going to go over to Hubert for the second talk. So please go ahead. You are muted.
You're seeing that this is the common problem. Hello, everybody. Hope everybody doing well. And I hope that if you think that the storage is boring, let's talk about something what is related to lawyers and government, and so licenses and basically how you make money. So let's start where basically all we starting. So hello, everybody. My name is Hubert. I'm sysadmin, old-fashioned sysadmin, where I started the data centers with the running cables and installing the service into rack and to understand the whole stack. And recently, you know, love for the containers just get me to the Kubernetes and learning even Golang, which I think is a fantastic tool and to develop any kind of system administration tools to make the day and life easier. Let's talk about something simple, base license. So everybody knows that whatever the product is created, usually it should have to have a license. I think it's even a requirement on the different countries. And as we saw today, Kubernetes is released on the license. There's a lot of different tools are released on the license. And probably if you created some open source tool, like we saw already from the Michael, it have a license as well. So there is growing community, there's growing amount of the different tools, the different projects, what they're using, all they are released under open source, or using any open source solution, or any either libraries, packages, or even language. Golang language is open source language, so which not many people really know. And if you never heard about this, there is 70 different open source licenses. Well, right now, when last time I checked, this is 70 different licenses. So is a 95% probably the people do not checking if the application and if they're doing npm install, Python install, or whatever is like every single dependency, what kind of license have. And I'm hoping that everybody who is enjoying pizza will find something interesting moving forward, because they might be in this group or are interested. So this is the picture. What you see here is from fantastic tool. You can go and check it. It's basically you type your npm package, what you want to use, and will show you this beautiful graph of all different packages related. And so not only packages for what you want to relate, but the packages of the packages of the packages. So if you see here, this is Browserify application, which downloading 100 different packages. So this starts to get offhand. And what is even more interesting, a lot of when I was preparing for this, and I tried to get information from the different companies, I've been informed that basically they try to track everything manually, which if you want to have continuous integration, continuous delivery, Kubernetes, fast deployment, and constantly updating versions, might get a little bit label. You might be a little bit offhand, especially if the project will grow really, really big. So let's talk about the problem with the licenses. Will be why it's manual checking is not even more easy, because licenses for the different kind of software can change, and this is not very. This is controversial topic, and I'm fully aware about this. And we know that recently Elastic changed the license from Apache to SS. I don't remember exactly the name, but this is not he was not the first one who did this move. There was a Cockroach DB, which changed the licenses. Redis introduced the special dual license where they were to lock some features. And one of the examples, if you have a shiny Mac, why are you using Z shell instead of Bash? That's another thing. Because the licenses in the middle of the developing of the Bash, they changed the license for GPL, and then what? So let's move to another slide. So this is an example here about when the problems start to be even more out of hand, when the two licenses, the two software what you try to use, they collapsing in terms of the licensing. As a first example, it's React. If everybody will remember, the React was released under Magic Facebook license, and Apache Foundation was a little bit iffy about that, and they released the statement that Facebook license do not apply for is not compliant with the Apache license. So anything React couldn't be used in any Apache application. So this put a lot of tension, especially if you heard about the Minio. They've been very, very loud about this because the whole UI was based on the React. So they have to rewrite it nearly whole front end, which, as we know, this is not the easy job, especially on the front end part. Another great example is ZFS with the Linux. We know that ZFS is introduced in the in BSD, but there is ongoing license dispute if the CDDL, if I could remember correctly, which is Oracle released the ZFS, is compilable, and Free Software Foundation. This is a recent snapshot from the web page, and this is an article from 2016 when the Ubuntu decided to go a little bit offhand, and they decided, yeah, we will add the ZFS by default, but Free Software Foundation says no. This is still, we do not agree that this is compatible with the GPL. So now, if you manually maintaining the list with a fast-pacing CI/CD word, with the licensing constantly changing and incompatibility, this basically start to get even more of pasta mixed when we started talking about the problem when the licenses do not apply with the country law. And here is one of the example when the company created the SAML library, what then Oracle was using for the government project. And there was 9 years of the battle to figure out that licenses, license and contract, there is no distinction between the license and contract in the French law. So the case was dismissed after 9 years of the battle. So the French have to introduce their own kind of open source license to cover up, to make the license compatible with the country law, which is, you can imagine this really is going out of hand. And in the end, I would like to say that on Wikipedia, there is a nice page with multiple examples about when any kind of open source license was challenged. So if you are very, very keen, I would like to say go and check it out, because it's really interesting from just pure perspective. And I'm not talking only about the two giants like Oracle and Google fighting over APIs, but there is much, much more of that. And this is the best example. Ruby off the Rails. If you ever heard about this, Ruby on Rails was using the one of the package in the Ruby product, and creator of this package updated the maintenance of the Ruby on Rails that his library is released under GPL license, which automatically makes Ruby on Rails 100% GPL. And as we know, the Ruby on Rails is kind of popular, even in the closed source products, which makes them already 100% GPL license as well. And if you build the company on the GPL, something what is basically you're selling and you're using Ruby on Rails, that makes a lot of headache and a lot of angry people probably. So this is something what again, it is not an easy thing to look at, and because everybody is just like, it's open source, I don't have to care about that. It's just code is there, so I can take it. And this kind of mentality, shows up that the licenses, it's just we developed ourselves to have a DevOps culture. Then we introduced the DevSecOps when the security was added, but we're still missing one of the things what can literally tank your company and your whole product, basically. So what we can do with that? Automation. That will be the best what we can do. And I would like to introduce you to a few examples of products which I am not endorsed, but I found them. I speak with the people what they're involved with, and will help you to work out the problem what we're talking about. So here's the first one is White Source is a company we're just doing very, very good job in case when you have a compliance, especially if you have a company and you want to go for the IPOs, you need to have a good audit of your software as well, and this company can help you with that. Would produce it that all your dependencies you are literally complied. So licenses 100% important. Do not push this away. And they have this tool. What they have is really, really good. You can implement this to your pipeline so that you can make this run. So with your current setup, it's just another job in the pipeline. Second one, which I think I would like to spend a little bit more, is Fossa. Fossa, it's really good, really, really good guys. First of all, the tool is split into two things. First one is to find vulnerabilities in your software, in your packages, or something. We all love this kind of tools where they automate finding if there's was any vulnerabilities, so we can update it. Fantastic piece of tool. Second part of this tool is exactly the same like a White Source. literally is you integrate this to your pipeline, is literally checking if everything is compliant, and will have, so you can add this to your pipeline, and you can create the report again for the IPOs. And why Fossa is even better, because Fossa have the ability to figure out if the licenses are not compliant together, which again takes a lot of headache from your head. And I think that this is really important, because you basically using or it doesn't matter which tool you would like to use it, just take away of the problems what you can run into in the future. And why Fossa is even more fantastic tools, and these guys are amazing. If I could remember, they had something like for open source projects. You could have they give you some the testing to if you're hosting on the GitHub. I think that they have some free tiers. So if you have an open source project, you could have this to check if you are fully 100% compliant. But even on top of that, because this is not all how these guys are awesome. They have a fantastic blog when they putting a lot of information about the licenses. It's just a gold mine of how to, if you're starting the project and you want to figure out which license will work for you, how much you want to be restricted, or if this will apply in my country or anything like this. Their blog is fantastic. It is pure gold. So check them out. Really good, cool guys. And no, they keep giving. They are really good guys. So this is trdrlegal.com. This is the website when you can type the name of the license, what you're looking for, and they will come back to you and say what you can and what you cannot do and what you must do. So here is an example for the GNU license version 3, and straight away in the quick summary in the plain English, you have putting here. You can read the whole sentence, if there's whole license, if you want to. You read it, and if you got nothing to do, better to do before you go to sleep, GPL free. It's really something for any kind of insomnia. Test it, and so that's one of this thing that, of course, it is free. So there is no telling you about the relationships if this license are complying with this license and stuff like that. So this is something what probably will have to speak with your in-house counsel, because as we know, every single company have a lawyer, because yes, definitely there is no such a. But definitely working with the licenses, and it's one of the things what we will have to do it. This is not something what we probably will never run away. So in the end, if you said, oh, I have a startup, or I have an open source project, and I don't have a money to, or we just started and we want something simple, especially, and if it can be open source, that will be better. Here you go. This is another license finder from Pivotal. This is written in Ruby. It works in this way that basically, if you have, for example, Python, you do the pip install all your dependencies, and then you run this tool. So in the pipeline, you should just need to have installed Ruby and Python, for example. And he's going through the all Python installed packages and checking the licenses. So based on that, then you can say, oh, I am 100% happy with the Mozilla license, Apache license, because I checked with my lawyer, these two can go together, but I'm not happy with the license, which is for GPL, for example. And this tool in this tool, you can 100% set up that, oh, I agree for this license, but I disagree for this license. And so this is really cool tool. If you want to just start using something for now, and in the later use these two fantastic tools, what they're doing much more, but you want to have something for the start. This is tool what you might looking for, especially they producing maybe not best looking, but you can have HTML report, which already is a good start. So again, this is really, really good if you can install everything in one in one environment. I don't know how your pipeline environments are set up, but basically this can check what was installed, like a Python, npm. There is a for Go. It was, I think, in the experimental version was Java. There was C++, many languages. So this is a good place basically to start. And I think that I will try to show you something, if I can get out from the presentation. This is something why this is important. So this is Python packages, work calendar, beautiful mesh of the words. When we basically, what's happened, it's on our pipeline, we find out that the product in the end, it's under, I think, MIT license. Come on, work with me. Browser don't want to cooperate. Okay, but yeah, so it's licensed under MIT, but they use one of the packages. What they use when you do the pip install, they use the Lunar data, another package which is released under GPL. So this was to 2019, so a little bit while ago, but basically maintainer, contributor, very nice person, when he was trying to address the problem, he would do not think that using the Python like a library or dependency will make a code. And basically he's putting a lot of information here how he thinks this will work out, but he put four different outcomes what they can happen. And basically this was still going 2019, and as we can see, 12th of March is the latest update. So this is still a thing. So the good rule of thumb will be always is just like, if you think that this is GPL and can offer and might take down your application, I would suggest do not use it if you do not releasing something under GPL license, because it's fine to use GPL license. It is fantastic license. However, this is not always. There was one of the talk of the Linux kernel maintainers and Bosiacki, where he was saying that a lot of the companies do not agree completely on for any open source licenses because they are still to copyright. So he creates something what is a BSD zero close license, which it is basically it's just like, take it and please don't sue me. And but licensing, especially when we're going bigger, it definitely will come back, and will have to be something will have to be done. So again, if I can come back to these guys, White Source, really good guys, really fantastic tool, and they have a free trial, so you can give a shot. Fossa, again, they keep on giving like crazy. Blog, which is fantastic. Of course, I will say White Source, they putting the blogs as well. It's more technical than licenses. So if you want to, make sure that your application is fully licensed correctly, their blog is fantastic. And again, TLDR legal, fantastic name and fantastic tool just to grasp what's going on with the licenses and what you have to do to not be, to not be being sued by the company, because someone will, figure out that, oh, I'm using this random application, and this is, even if there is not even under GPL, but for example, MIT, you still have other responsibilities. You have to, there is a must closed. So you still have to, and if you do not fill up, then basically there will a few guys with the suits might knock to your company doors. And again, this is not something what no one knows and no one would like to have. So if you want to start somewhere, this open source tool it's fantastic. If you know Ruby, help write the contributor, because it is a fantastic tool. A little bit iffy from time to time, especially if you're not a Ruby developer. So it's sometimes I run into circles with this one, but it is something what you can introduce today and move to more mature products later. So I think I have 5 minutes. So perfect time for any kind of questions. I hope that they are, because we all love pizza. And yeah, I hope that I will give the best answers.
So this was awesome. Thank you so much, Hubert, for sharing lots of useful resources as well. I didn't know about most of them, so super interesting.
So answering the question why I do not allow humans to deploy anything to production, this is one of the reasons. This is and one of the problems what we ran out, especially with the license fund when it was introduced. It's a lot of developers do not even think about the relationships between the licenses. It's just like, oh, it's open source, who cares? And that's something what definitely, if you don't have lawyers, if you don't have a people what they can dig into license, and they living and breathing with open source, then you can probably you look for FOSSA or white source, because you really you can run out very quickly into a problem.
Oh, absolutely. So just if you have any questions that you want to ask Hubert, then please go to this link, ev.com/cherylhung278, and you should be able to see this questions, and you should be able to type in on your phone or on your laptop anything that you want to ask. It's like Reddit, so there's also upvotes and downvotes. We're just going to wait a couple of minutes and see if there are any questions that come in.
As I think I said that licenses is not a very sexy topic, but I think that there is like with the storage and Kubernetes APIs. It's I think that the best quote what I heard is just like, make the Kubernetes API boring is a good thing, and I fully agree. Especially why the storage should be boring, because it's that then we know that it works.
What got you started looking at licensing? Did you run into problems at the company that you work at?
No, how to say this? Because I was reading a lot about this oopsies with the licensing, and it dating way back, and when especially I started reading about the problem with the licenses when it was Oracle, Google, and it's just like why they have a dispute, and then why ZFS they have a problem, and this is what teach me to just like, oh, it's open, so it's not every single license is open source that you can grab and use it, and then there is a conflict. So when I joined to this company, I will start introducing this kind of setups when I know this license, I do not have to read this license. So, and then because I go through every single license, and believe me, some people just designed their own licenses.
They designed their own licenses?
Yes. So they took, so there was one Python package. And this is really annoying because on the GitHub, they have a different license than what they have in the package. So, when you create the Python package, you're usually putting, this is our license. Mm-hmm. But in the GitHub, they have different license. With this will create a lot of confusion. It's just like these two, and they are very similar, but so they move from Mozilla open source license to they kind of own, where they try to do something with the wording. It's just being exactly the same, but they decided that they don't want to have a Mozilla name.
It seems like a very bad idea to to mess with licenses unless you're
Yes.
a lawyer.
Yes. So as I said, some companies, they literally they tracking manually the what dependencies the application have already. Again, one npm package, 100 dependencies. Good luck, especially if we know the npm, anything what is based on the JavaScript can grow fast. With the numbers. And we have a question.
Come in. So how do you see the overlap between companies retaining patent rights and yet allowing redistribution via an open source license?
See the overlap between the companies retaining patent rights. So that's the problem with what we, for example, run in France, in terms of the when licensing and the contracts by French law is completely not so. There's no difference between the license and the contract. So this is more question based on the country what you come from. I coming from Poland, and in Poland we do not have a common law type. We have a Roman law type, when basically, so if it's not permitted, if it's basically under this, if it's not permitted, it's allowed, or something this way. So there's no, it is different a little bit mindset. So licenses is something what have to be completely developed. With this kind of allowing redistribution via, the question is more like how company can handle their own product they have they keep the vision. And my answer is there is so many licenses, 70. There's 70 open source licenses, and including a lot of free licenses, if I can say it like that, like this SS, the Redis is on this license, MongoDB is on this license, and the Elastic is on this license. When it's open, you can contribute it, but they literally, the Elastic keep a lot under the umbrella. So you don't have to redistribute something on the open license. You need to remember, open source, it's not only a privilege, but also something what you need to understand what you're getting into. It's not just, hey, get my free software, but by the way, will be nice if you pay some license when we've decided. Well, that's Oracle. Sorry.
I think this is definitely get a lawyer if you're getting into the details of this.
Yes, this is not for this like a light talk in CNCF London. This is something what the lawyers of the country what you're coming from do have to be discussed, definitely.
Cool. We are out of time, but Hubert, thank you so much for sharing this with us. I found it super interesting. So we are now going to go on to a short 15-minute break. So just feel free to go grab a drink, grab some water, stand up, stretch a bit. Feel free to just take it easy. And then we'll be back in 15 minutes time at 8:30 UK time for our last talk from Viktor, which has the very interesting title of Developers Do Not Need Kubernetes. So I will see you very shortly. And you can also come over to Rambly again or cheryl.com/r to hang out and chat to some other people at the meetup, which is where I'm going to go right now. Alrighty, and we are back on for our third talk of the evening. So I'd like to welcome Viktor, who's going to talk to us about whether developers really need Kubernetes. Viktor, over to you.
They don't. That's the end of the talk.
Quick talk. We're done.
Yeah, okay. So I'm not very prepared, so it will be a bit of winging it, right? Anyways, what is happening? I mean, we're all aware that there is a strong tendency to shift left, and that obviously does not mean that everybody can do everything, because that's obviously not true. But we want to empower developers. I mean, most companies are going in that direction, that we want to empower developers to be in more control over their applications, right? Of course, not doing everything, because that's impossible, but empowering developers to do more, right? Kind of in the past, for example, actually, let me stop here right away. In this context, when I say developer, I mean a person who writes code for the end user application, right? Obviously, everybody is a developer today. Everybody writes code, right? Testers write code, sysadmins write code, everybody writes code, so everybody is a developer. But in this context, just for the sake of argument, when I say developer, I mean person who does works on some application, it is deployed somewhere. Anyways, I already forgot where I was. Yeah, so we want to empower developers to be more in control of their applications, and potentially to create some guardrails so that they cannot go very much outside of, let's say, safe paths and stuff like that, right? Same way as we empowered developers a long time ago, for example, to write their own tests, right? Almost nobody's having, I hope actually, maybe somebody, but majority is not having dedicated testers one-to-one compared to developers. They're doing that, and now we're moving towards them being in charge of writing definitions of their applications, potentially deploying their applications. Actually, I don't want anybody to deploy applications. I want it to be part of CD processes, but that would be a separate story. Anyways, so shifting to the left, right? And now when the Docker emerged, that was kind of like God sent, because it was relatively straightforward, relatively simple. Almost anybody with sufficient interest can figure out how it works and what it does with a relatively short period of time. Docker, of course, failed because, I mean, when I say Docker in this context, I mean mostly Docker Swarm failed, mostly because it tried to satisfy that user experience, and it did very well, but it failed to make things make the systems do what they need to do, and that's why we all turned into Kubernetes today. I mean, not today, a while ago. Now, the problem with Kubernetes is that Kubernetes is really too complex for anybody who does not spend sufficient amount of time to work with it. Just if you take the simplest possible application and you say, hey, you need to define deployment, and you need to define a service, and probably you need to define a virtual service, and you need a gateway, and so on and so forth. And we are still talking about relatively simple use cases. That becomes really, really complex. And on top of that, another problem that Kubernetes poses, at least from the developer perspective, is that Kubernetes manifests are not really defining applications. They're closer to defining infrastructure, even though I know that's not really fully true, than applications. They define resources that need to run somewhere. And we are still in very early stages, I think, as industry, of understanding how we can define applications running in Kubernetes as being applications for what they are, and not really a bunch of different resources that needs to be stitched together. Now, defining different resources, that's all good, that's all fine. Not we all do it. Some of us doing it all the time, but it's simply too complex and not in line with what developers need. So as a result of all that feeling, we are getting some new stuff, like Open Application Model, for example, is trying to solve that problem of how can we define applications as being applications, and that gets translated into whatever the platform needs, like be it Kubernetes or maybe, I don't know, Lambda or whatever that something is, right? Being that intermediary level between defining applications and and what the end result is, or no matter how many layers of end results we're having today, right? But anyways, we have a problem, and that problem is that at least with the current state of most of the current state of Kubernetes, is that either people are going to stop doing what they're doing for a long time until they figure out everything that needs to be figured out in Kubernetes ecosystem, not even Kubernetes itself, or they will need to rely on some other people to do the work for them. Like, hey, can you, define my application, right? Hey, deploy my application. Hey, do this. Hey, do that, which is probably the opposite of what most of us want, kind of like opposite the direction from shifting left and empowering developers while creating guardrails for them in a way. And we have to choose between that. And this year, we can see a lot of traction in that area of how we can make developers transparent. Hence the title of my talk. I never really wanted to say, hey, Kubernetes developers do not need Kubernetes. It's more like developers do not need to know the intricacies of Kubernetes. They do not even necessarily need to see Kubernetes in order to run their applications in Kubernetes. In the same way as most of us are not really dealing with hypervisors today, right? We just say, go to AWS, Azure, Google, whatever you're having. I want 3 nodes, you get 3 nodes, right? You don't need to. We got a higher level abstraction that helps us not deal with the things unless that's really your area of expertise and what you're doing. What I'm going to show you is one potential solution, let's say, how we can maintain control and allow people who are specialized in managing systems to do their work while still enabling developers to have a simple way how they can manage their applications without really going too much outside of the safe zone in a way, right? So I'm going to show Shipa. I'm going to actually share my screen very quickly. I will try to do that as fast as possible so that we can have more time for discussion, which is usually the part that I want. So I will try to go fast. Stop me at any moment if you have any questions or if I go too fast or anything like that, right? So what I'm going to do is that I'm going to create a framework. So in a more traditional way, I would divide it into, hey, this is what operations do or admins do, and this is what developers do. So this would be kind of more from administrative perspective of sysadmin or SRE or whatever you are, right? And so we want to define, hey, what are the boundaries that developers should, or developers, not admins, should be confined to. So I'm going to create a framework. Framework is a way to define those boundaries and then certain prerequisites and what's not. And I will call it, and by the way, I'm showing you now from the UI, you can do it from the CLI or defining it as YAML or what's not, right? So let's say I'm going to call it framework. I can select provisioner. Right now, that's only Kubernetes, but I think that there are plans in the future to make it extend to more things. Hey, whomever is using this framework should be using traffic or Istio or potentially other ingresses or service meshes. I will leave it to traffic. Hey, whomever is working with this something should be confined to this namespace. I could enter the namespace here or keep it empty, and then it will be assigned to me, and other options like, hey, make it this default framework so that I don't need to specify it later on. Plan is not really important. That's mostly how much resources you can be getting. I mean, it's important, but not for this conversation. Which teams are allowed to use this segment of the cluster or part of the cluster to do something? It could be specific team. For simplicity, I will make it public, meaning everybody. How many applications those developers using this can can operate with or deploy. I will change it to unlimited, but it can be a specific number. Number of registries that are allowed for those. If you want to enforce some network policies, and if you go out here, then it goes into a bunch of options depending on what we're selecting. Policy mode can be this, can be that, and so on and so forth. I will go back, and you will need to trust me that there's a lot of options over there. And just skip this and ignore the policies for now. And stuff like that, right? Do you want to perform security scans? If you do want, which components should be ignored, which CVEs should be ignored, or everything should be not ignored, I will skip it as well. So we have a framework. And then there is only one more, let's say, step left, and that is to tell the system which cluster it should use with this framework. And in this case, I will create a new cluster. And for that, I will need to execute a script that I prepared in advance. I'm really starting from scratch over here. Here's a script. I will just install in my existing cluster, which I created before this session, few roles and service accounts so that the Shipa can communicate with my cluster. And more importantly, I have the output here so that I do not think much about what is the information about my cluster. So I will just copy and paste it here. So I'm adding the cluster to the system. I'm saying next, this is the address of the cluster. This is the token of the cluster. By the way, I will destroy this cluster after this session, so don't even try to memorize my token or screenshot it. Anyways, and certificate, right? And basically, from here on, I'm telling, hey, this framework with those restrictions, with these capabilities, and so on and so forth, all the things that will soon define what applications are and what they can be, is connected to this cluster. I can configure traffic. The reason why I'm configuring traffic here is because previously in the framework, I said that I want to use traffic. If I would like to use East or something else, I will get different options. I would just say create. And then my cluster should be added here. Here it is. It's called cluster. And the only thing left before I actually jump into what I wanted to do is to add, to configure my CLI. I will need a second for this. Shipa target remove list. Okay, Shipa. Second target add. Oh, I noticed that I'm typing in a wrong terminal. Sorry for that. Here it is. Shipa target add. I'm going to call it I don't know, meetup. This is my target. And I will set it as current. I'm using cloud version or SaaS version of Shipa, but it can run in your cluster as well. Just for simplicity, SaaS was easier today. Anyway, now my terminal can speak with Shipa, and I can now change my hat and say, okay, now I'm a developer. Let me actually double check. Oh, I forgot to log in. So yeah, I remember that I forgot something. Okay, just quick check whether it works. Yeah, it works. I can communicate with the cluster, and I can now simulate that I'm a developer. Now, as a developer, what I would really want to do, what I probably do most of the devs, what you really want is to run your application, and there are essentially two ways how you can run applications. One is just say, hey, this is the source code of my application. And I trust that somebody who understands how those things work already set up the framework and everything that needs to be set up. I just want to give you my source code. And then that something should be running in a cluster. I want it to be as easy as that, or slightly more complicated and say, hey, I already have a container image, and I would like to run that image in the cluster, and whatever that means. If that means create a deployment, hey, why not? If that means create a Istio or something, why not? But what I want as a person more focused on writing code of an application that really thinking about systems is to tell you, this is my image, this is my application, run it. And to do that, essentially, it would be two commands. One is, hey, I want to create a new application, DevOps toolkit, let's say. Oh, and the framework will be framework. I forgot that argument. That's the framework that I created earlier. That's what I did as ops person instead of being now a dev person, right? And what I really want to do next, from now on, now that the application is created, creating application is just more like a placeholder than really doing much more than that. What I really want to do is, hey, I want to deploy my application, and I can do that. Deploy --app. Application is the same, whatever I called earlier. Let me double check very quickly. Yeah. The application is whatever I created earlier, and now I want to deploy, and I want to say something as simple as, here is my image, and the image is this one. And run it. I mean, normally in a real world situation, I would probably specify a tag, but I was too lazy to remember the latest tag I have. So a specific tag I have, so I will be deploying the latest, right? And this should take a couple of moments. Now, if I switch to the UI now, right, I should have my application now being deployed. Actually, it is now pulling the image, so it's not deployed yet. It will take maybe a few more, maybe 5 seconds. There we are. Now, of course, you can extend this. It can be much more complicated than this, but we are trying to keep it extremely simple on dev side. And if it needs to be complicated, that more goes on ops side, right? So now it should be running. There we are, right? Now my application is running. I can go there. Or I can continue using CLI depending on what you prefer. I prefer, of course, CLI, and I can say, hey, give me the information about the application, and the application is called DevOps Toolkit, and the information is really here. Like this is the auto-generated address, which you can control as well, but I went for simple. That expose that application, and I can open it in browser, and hopefully it will work. There it is. It's a silly application, Hugo, I think, or something like that. Anyways, and behind the scenes, what is happening, or what was supposed to happen, really, is that it created all the stuff there, and we can see the stuff. If I go to check the namespaces, and I say Shipa framework, because that's how I call the framework, and get, I don't know, all and ingresses. For example, all the resources that are required for that application to run are there running. There are probably actually a couple of CRDs there as well. And what those resources are is actually in partly or fully in control of, ops people, people who are defining what would be the permutations of the things that are happening in the systems. As I mentioned before, like, hey, it can be Istio, it should be Istio, it should be traffic, it should be Nginx, ingress, or whatever rules you have, right? And then from there on, it's only about iterating. Devs either create very simple manifests, which I think is about to be released, or just use the CLI. and through CLI control what they need and when they need, and ops are creating the guardrails that help that happen. That's as I said before, I wanted to make it as quick as possible, as short as possible, so that I can have like remaining 10 minutes for questions, which might not be related to Shipa. Shoot.
Fantastic. Thank you so much, Viktor. And I was just going to say, if you don't mind not sharing your screen for a second, I will bring up our Q&A bit. So if you've got any questions for Viktor and you're watching on YouTube or Twitch, then go to this link, polev.com/showerhung278 on your phone or on your laptop, and you will see a slide here where you can enter in your questions for Viktor. But yeah, super cool. Also, I do love a good talk that doesn't have a presentation. I mean, Hubert's talk was also all presentation, which I love as well, but I think it's always brave to have no presentation at all.
I was about to say that, hey, having no presentation can be interpreted in two ways. That's because I might feel that that's better, or I might be lazy to create them, and then I have a good excuse.
Everything depends.
Cool.
Exactly.
Sorry,
Depends on material, I guess.
So I can start with a question. How much is configurable it's Shipa? In terms of, let me give you an example. One of the problems what I run into my dealing with a Kubernetes, it's that what I have to very deeply change DNS configuration, especially for Alpine images. This is not something very people know a lot, but if you do not make the n dot equal 1, you might run into a huge problem when the Alpine container try to do the DNS queries. So my question is, how much can Shipa help me with that? Because I have help, because they do not allow me to modify the Helm helps a lot, but if you try to get into more customization, if it's not code in or into template, then basically you're literally nearly locked out, because even then when you can't even modify it on the API level in the Kubernetes.
Yes, so the level of customization is, how would I put it? I'm trying to figure out the scale. Let's call it medium. There are certain things you can customize from Shipa itself. And then for everything else, and I'm talking about today, I'll soon switch into tomorrow. For everything else, it is still Kubernetes, right? So you can still, it's not a, hey, if you use Shipa, you're not using Kubernetes. It is Kubernetes, so you can still customize it theoretically or in practice as well, as much as you want outside of it, right? I mean, if I got the image case, you can create, and I'm really half inventing right now, but you can create policies yourself who will not allow certain images to be deployed, right? Right now, for example, images are not really controlled by, or which are allowed and not really controlled directly by Shipa. And there are many other examples, right, where Shipa does or doesn't solve or provide certain level of control. Now, the general gist within the project, both Shipa and its open source counterpart, which is Catch, is to go towards direction where it's focused on creating a mechanism for you to do that. I mean, for you to extend it basically to anything, theoretically anything you want, right? So it's more at least, I'm not sure how the Shipa as a company defines it, but the direction at least is to enable ops to enable developers to do stuff, if that makes certain sense, kind of.
100%. All right, thank you very much for that. This is what I was looking, because again, Helm, it's as much it's a great product to start, but if you have a mixed architecture cluster as with the ARM and classical AMD, the Helm can be in the middle, and this is if the template is not prepared so you can choose that this containers can run on ARM and this containers can run on AMD, it can be challenging.
Yeah, I personally, I mean, I would partly agree with you that Helm is great to start with. I have my beefs with Helm. One of the things that, one of the potential mistakes I think that Helm is making is that if Helm is trying to, I think that the bunch of the things that are happening on a client side with Helm should be actually happening in a cluster. I think that cluster should be, and we can do those things theoretically. Should be able to say, hey, those are the definitions of what you can define yourself. So personally, I would like to see some kind of, and we are going there with different other projects. When I say we, I mean industry, not Shipa. To hey, you should define inside of a cluster what something is, and then have it on a client side more like from a user perspective. So kind of I don't see templates as having to be on a client side. Values, yes. If I would be now focused on Helm. I see a question. Can you use Shipa to set policies such as applications must have annotations they're using backup? No, today no. You cannot set annotations through Shipa. Again, that would need to be something that you would set outside Shipa. As I said before, it's I think that the project started initially first as having, let's say that there are two phases of the project, potentially. One is to define inside of the project, kind of very easy ways to define, hey, it should use Istio, it should use traffic, it should do this, it should do that. And then the next phase should be, now actually, there is a mechanism for you to extend all the capabilities of Shipa. And then once the project gets there, then yes, you either somebody from the Shipa team creates a way, let's say, to manipulate annotations, or you yourself extend it. So what does Shipa actually do? Is the idea I have my JavaScript code I wrote and I just head it to Shipa and Shipa figures out what I need, an ingress route and various other things? Or did you have a configuration file to say what components were needed? So it's the first case. You have in your example JavaScript code, and you let's say deploy it or to Shipa, and Shipa knows what to do with that JavaScript code, and it knows what to do with it because somebody configured Shipa that in those circumstances your JavaScript code should be this and that. Right, so it's kind of, it's a tool for devs to just say, here's my code, run it, and it's a tool for ops to define what it really happens when you say, here's my code, run it. If that makes sense. Last question. I have 2 more minutes. If there is one more question, I will try to answer it. Or no?
Yeah, I was going to say the same thing. We're going to wrap up in about, well, probably 1 minute now. So any last questions for Viktor? Or if not, what is the best way for people to ask you questions, to get in touch with you?
I don't know how to, Twitter at Farcic. I guess nobody sees the messages in Zoom, right?
People probably won't get it in Zoom.
Here it's easy. Most of the things I do are completely public. If you Google my name, you will find me. I promise. It's a guarantee. Especially since I don't think that there is another Viktor with the last name Farcic.
All right, perfect. Sweet. In that case, I think we should wrap up for the evening. So I want to say thank you once again to all three of our speakers tonight. So Michael, Hubert, and Viktor, thank you so much for coming and sharing everything that you know with us today. Again, thank you to all of our sponsors who keep the event running. We will be back on the first Wednesday of July, as usual. And with that, thank you so much for joining us. I will see you again next time. Have a good night.
Good night.